Welcome to the final project of the year. It's our chemistry superhero project. This is a big change of pace, and a lot of you will find it a nice change of pace in what you are going to be required to do, and you get roughly a week to do so. And for most, you get extra time if needed. So let's talk about what is required. You're going to create a superhero based on an element. You're going to use your element's chemical properties to create powers. So you might have to look up what some of the powers are based on chemical properties. You're going to invent a sidekick, enemies, and city that fit your superhero. And for the final project, you're going to create a comic. You will have 3 things you have to hand in. One of them is a brainstorming sheet. So what we have done for you is basically laid it out and allowed you to fill in all of the things that you're going to need, and it'll help you in the long run. So the more time you put into this brainstorming sheet, the less time all of it's going to take for you. So for example, let's just look at the top here. It says choose an element for your superhero. So I'm going to make one up here. I'm going to pick gold. Okay. So then you're going to name your superhero, and maybe mine's the Golden Boy. Then you're going to come up with powers. Now, all of these powers don't have to be used in your comics. So the first couple powers might be more important to you than others. So they have to include the chemical properties. So for example, I wrote reactivity. What does it react with? Or what doesn't it react with? Maybe it has a melting point. Radioactivity, toxicity, flammability, stability. So if something is flammable, maybe they have the ability to shoot fire or fireballs or something like that. Well, gold, as an example, is very malleable. And malleability is basically being able to bend and compress things. So maybe in parentheses I write malleability as my property, but my power might be that they're very bendable or flexible, or they can stretch, or they can flatten out or become very thin, or something like that, right? Phase changes. They could phase change kind of like, and be able to manipulate their bodies. So that could be something. Okay, you're going to write a backstory for your superhero. So how was he or she created? How did she or he come to be? So in some of the examples, you'll see how that looks. Okay, so it must be based on the element's properties, and this should help you write your comic. So think about how it all comes together. Okay, you can also have some sidekicks. So your sidekick should be based on elements that react with your hero. So one that maybe reacts violently, or one that will react nicely, doesn't matter. But some of people in the past have used the 2 elements, and when they come together, they create some super weapon. It doesn't have to be like that. But you're going to have to come up with a sidekick, so that's another element. Okay, and then a power and a brief explanation. Then villains. And we're going to ask you to come up with 2, but you only really need to use 1 in your comic. So this can be based on an element or a compound. So for example, you could use water. That's a compound. That's H and O. So, some people, I'm just going to say this, I hope not everybody uses this now, is that their hero was iron and one of the villains was water. So the water can create rust on the hero. So that's one of the issues that they had in their comic. Okay. And then on the bottom, you're going to have to come up with a city as well. Okay, so again, you're going to fill all this out. Brainstorming is the important part here in the beginning. Okay, then, so part 1 is, and 2 really is this brainstorming sheet. Part 3 is a character board. This will be due at a different time. And a character board is whenever you're making a movie or a book or anything else, you want to kind of just write out the big ideas. So we have origin. How was your superhero created? Guys, this could be bullet points, or this could be sentences. So it can be either one, but it should have some description in there. How does your hero use their powers for good? How does he fight the bad guys? So that's powers. The description of the city, the sidekick, so the teamwork. How do the superhero and the hero and the sidekick work together? The villain, so your arch nemesis, description of the villain and the motivation for fighting, and then the epic battle. There will be an epic battle. What is the nature of the battle between the hero and the villains? Okay, on your brainstorming sheet, this is where you're going to pretend like these are your comics. So like you're storyboarding it. So what is going to happen in your story? So Below, map out a plan for your comic. Include the main idea for each frame. See below for what must be included. So the story must go in sequential order. Hero using their powers at least once. Sidekick aiding the superhero. Villain using their weapon. And the city and the layout at some point. Maybe that's just in the background. Whatever. But you have to do this minimum of 6, I call them slides, with 6 frames. Okay? You can do more. We'll talk about that. So here's just an example on your storyboard. You don't have to draw it. You could write it. You could have something going on this one right here. Maybe you wrote, and I'm trying not to give you a whole story here. Arch enemy is bullied by superhero and decides to create an elixir in a homemade lab that gives him the power to manipulate the Earth's interior. I don't know. And then maybe something else happens, and then the sidekick is kidnapped by the arch enemy, and then something else happens, So those are some ideas of how we're asking you to lay out your creation for your storyboard. So, comics. You can just do a boring 3x2 and make 6 frames. You could have more exciting kinds of comics. So I actually have a website that can create a bunch of different layouts, and we have that in modules. So you could have many different kinds of layouts. So you can have some fun different kinds of layouts, and we're giving you that opportunity. You could just make it yourself with a ruler and a pen and make your own frames, and you could divide them in half. I mean, this frame right here, you could make a lightning bolt in the middle, and it's like the hero was a normal person and now they're the new golden boy or whatever it's going to be. Okay, so obviously these are professional, but you can have dialogue boxes, and you can have your comic go through. So here are 6 right here, and here's a few more than 6. Don't forget comic actions. When someone gets hit or something happens, they make funny words on them. So here's an example. You can come back to this. You can look at that. Origin examples. If you're trying to remember how a superhero is created, here are the only creations that I could find. I found this interesting comic that shows this. So you could have a radioactive spider bite. You could be born a mutant. You could have a deal with the devil. Government testing. Be from another planet. Gamma radiation. An energy ring. Cosmic rays. Electrochemical reaction. Robotic suit. Expensive gadgets. Or a son of a god. So those are the only things. If you can come up with something else, that's great. But usually that's something that usually like exposure to something or some other interesting development would cause you to become a superhero. So just food for thought. We have a rubric that's on the sheet. You can look at it, but make sure that you're going through this. For some of you, this is really important. If you're going for a grade or you're trying to pass, this could be your saving grace. So make sure that you look at all of this. And this is all actually, this says homework score, but these are all going to be lab grades. So this is going to lab and project grades. This is going to be a pretty big deal for you. And if you choose not to do it, this could hurt you too. So make sure that you're working on this. So again, you're going to have a comic. You're going to have your brainstorming worksheet. You're going to have your character board, and then you're going to have your comic itself. And you can read through what is all required. Okay. And these points might be a little bit different, so please look at the sheet because this is an old presentation for the rubric part. So here we go. Part 1 and Part 2. Brainstorming due by the end of class, I guess I'd say by the end of the day on Wednesday, 5/27. Your character board by the end of Thursday, and your final comic attached with the character board and the brainstorming. So basically, you're going to submit your final comic by next Friday. So here are some examples of actual people. So I'm not saying you have to be the greatest artist in the world. This person clearly is quite talented, and you can see how they did that. I want to show you, this one's not nearly as strong. This one didn't get a great grade, but I'm trying to show you some different examples. So this was stick people. But you can rock out stick people too. Oh, here's a great example of, here's your brainstorming sheet. Here's your character board. On the back of your brainstorming sheet is a map of what you want for your final comic. So these are some examples of what is going to be filled out. So again, one last time. Next Wednesday, brainstorming is due. Thursday, character board's due. Friday, comic is completed. So here are some final examples. I'm not saying they're all great, not saying they're all bad. One I want to point out in this, I thought this was really creative. They drew these And then they typed out the dialogue boxes and then cut them as little dialogue boxes and glued them on. I thought that was extremely clever and very neat to be able to manage their comic that way. I thought that was really a really neat idea. Here's one. Hey, they're stick people. They're rocking it. I love how they're doing breaking news. They're acting like it's from a news program. I thought this was really cool. Another stick person, but really, really well done. And another one that they did typing with dialogue boxes. This one, the woman superhero comes out of a strontium mine, and I think she's Strontium Girl and gain powers from that. Okay, so again, you don't have to be the greatest artist. You can be a great artist and have a lot of fun with this as well. So, if you have any questions, obviously, come and find us and talk to us, but you have a week to have your superhero project done. Have fun, good luck, and enjoy it.